discuss about initiation, the requirement phase, the design phase, construction phase, execution phase, etc. So in all the cases, all the phases, all the processes, process groups, and all the phases of the project, this is a continuous monitoring activity, and this is very essential. It depends upon the project manager. Some of the project managers may not do that on a continuous basis, and it might, I mean, they might fail in their task, where they might fail sometimes. So it is very essential that as an effective and efficient project manager, there has to be a continuous monitoring and controlling mechanism. And what are the outputs here? The output could be in terms of performance report, because you may have to you may have to send performance report to your higher ups on the progress status report, on the requested changes. For example, during the course of the project, there could be changes coming in. You may have to accommodate changes from the stakeholders. So it may be a change may be against the scope, or it may be out of scope. So whatever it is, it has to be tagged, it has to be monitored, it has to be again, we'll have to find out the cost of doing the changes, etc. And overall, if a change request is provided, you need to again update some of your plans, because the change might affect some of the plans which you have already made, so that needs to be updated. So in a project monitoring and control, as you can see, it has got a lot of activities which involves complete monitoring and controlling all other phases as well. And the project closing phase, the last process is the fifth process group. It talks about involving and gaining the customer acceptance. For example, before the project is closed, it is very essential that you get a concurrence, you get a sign off, you get an acceptance from the main stakeholder and customers who have given you the product, who has given you the project, on the final outcome. If it is a construction of a product, whether it is constructed properly, whether it is launched properly, or whether it is a service, whether all aspects it is enunciated in the as a part of deliverable, whether it is completed. So here you have to get a complete sign off, acceptance. There is a document which is known as acceptance sign off from the stakeholder. So you have to get it signed, so that is a document which is a proof that the project is successfully delivered and you are ready to close the project now. In some cases, some of the projects could be abandoned in between. It may not be possible. In some cases, some of the projects could be dropped in between, maybe because of the budgetary constraints or because of certain other organizational issues. So even if projects are not closed, projects are not completed, you may still need to close it because it cannot be just abandoned. So if you are not going to continue with the project, it needs to be closed. And in case of a completed project, that also you need to close formally. And when you are completing a project and formally closing it, and then we need to document what are the learnings from this project which you have achieved. Say for example, if somebody is doing the metro rail, KMRL is doing the metro rail in a consultation with the Delhi Metro Rail Corporation. Now the KMRL should be able to document all the learnings which they have obtained once they complete this project, so that it can be used as a process, as it can be used as a depository for doing extension work later. So it is very essential, whether it is a software project, whether it is a hardware project, whether it is a product or whether it is a service product, we must document the further learnings. All the learnings which has come as a part of doing the project. This is for enabling for future projects and for reference to future project managers. And what are the outputs? The outputs include the project archives, all project documentations, everything which has been done as a part of project has to be archived. The lessons learned has to be known and documented, which are part of organizational processes. And most projects include a final report and presentation to the sponsor and senior management before closing a project. In many cases, the project manager and the senior team members might need to do a final report and presentation to the project sponsor and senior management on the overall project scenario, it is completed successfully, the benefits, whether the scope has been completed properly. So the full project presentation may need to be done, and a final report may need to be presented to the stakeholders and senior management. So ladies and gentlemen, we have so far discussed about the 5 core processes. This is a part of the PMI framework, and now after this we will discuss 9 project management knowledge areas. So in the PMI framework we talk about 5 process groups and 9 project management areas. What are the project management areas? Now these are the 9 areas identified by the PMI for effective subdivision of the task. So what are they? We will discuss in the next few slides. So the project management knowledge areas, these are the knowledge areas. To start off with, project integration management. Now project integration management talks about integrating individual components, ensures that various elements are integrated properly and coordinated properly. And what are the process outputs? It could be a project plan development, project plan execution, and overall change control. As a part of the integration document, for example, a project is consisting of a lot of sub-modules. You may need to test all the sub-modules to make sure that the project as an integrated product works properly. So integration management is talking about integrating the components, the sub-components of the project. Then the scope document, project scope management is about managing the scope of the project. As we were discussing in the beginning, we need to clearly identify what is in scope and what is out scope. So the project scope management knowledge area helps us to, it has got various processes to help the project manager to manage the scope of the work. So it ensures that the project includes all the work which is required, as required to be done, and we need to do only those work which is to be done. No additional work is required to be done. So we need to make sure that only those work which are required are completed. If anything comes extra, it will be change control. It will involve additional cost and time. So scope management is talking about managing the whole scope of the project, what is to be done and what is not to be done. Time management, as you all understand, manage the time. The project has to start on time, it has to end on time as enunciated in the planning document. Then we come to the cost management part. The cost management part talks about managing the cost, because we were discussing about doing the project within the budget and within the time. So it is very essential that we need to also have very cost conscious, because when the cost is not controlled, the project cost goes up, the budget goes up, it has a lot of problems. You may not get additional budget from the authorities. So it is very essential that a proper cost management is done to ensure that the project is completed within the approved budget. What are the processes involved here? The sub processes are the resource planning. You may have to have a proper resource planning. How many resources are required from on a day-to-day basis? What are their costs? How is the budgeting done, cost control done, and how is the cost monitored and controlled? So these are all parts of the cost management knowledge area. Then the next piece of knowledge area is project quality management. As we all understand, the project quality is also important, because you need to do the project within the cost and within the the time, of course, within the best quality. And the scope of the project quality management is to ensure that the project will satisfy the requirements according to the quality processes. What are the processes involved here? The quality planning. You may have to have a quality plan document as to what are the things you are doing to make sure that the project is done according to the quality required. And you may have to have quality assurance tests. You may have to have a quality control department. So these are the various processes you will be initiating as a part of project quality management. Then the communication management. The communication management talks about vertical communication, horizontal communication. Vertical communication in terms of passing on the necessary project information, the project status update, etc. to your top management and senior management. Horizontal communication is communicating with your peers in other groups or other departments, communicating with your team members. So the communication management is meant for timely and effective communication, generation of information, collection, storage, and distribution. Of course, you should have the right communication mix, you should have the right communication media to make sure that all the stakeholders are updated on the project details, on the project progress on a recurring basis. What are the project processes here? The communication planning. You may need to have a communication planning as to which document has to be sent to whom and by which periodicity and by which media. Is it to be sent through the post? Is it to be sent through email, or is it to be given as a presentation? Whatever it is, the communication planning has to be done. And the information distribution, what kind of information has to be distributed? Is it the cost information to be distributed or the resource information to be distributed? So what is to be distributed? What information to be distributed? That needs to be decided. And how will you report the performance, the project performance? How is the project progressing? Is it on target? Is it proceeding as per the plan? Is there any deviation? If any deviation has happened, how have you planned to? How have you taken care of the deviation? How have you taken care of the quality part? So all the things, the whole communication aspect will be handled in this particular knowledge area. And of course, the risk management, we talked about the risk tracker and the risk mitigation plan. As a part of your project, it's very essential that we were discussing, we should have a series of identified risks. And some of the risks may not be able to be identified in the beginning, but as and when as the project progresses, then you should be able to understand, you should be able to find out the risk, and then as and when it is identified, add it to the risk tracker and update your risk tracker to make sure that this is monitored and controlled. And you may have to have a regular updation of the risk plan, because some of the risks must be coming in between your projects. So it is concerned about identifying, analyzing, and responding to the project risks. You may need to respond. Some of the risks might happen as per your risk tracker. So if it happens, what action would you do? So responding to the project risks need to be done. How will you do that? So all the process is required for doing that. And our effort here is to minimize the positive, maximize the positive events. The risk part is there. You maximize the results of positive events. If any positive events are happening, you maximize its effects and minimize the consequences of negative events, So that part is done as a part of risk management. What are the processes here? Risk identification by the risk tracker, risk quantification, risk ranking, and risk response. If a particular risk happens, then how will you respond and how will you control that risk? Then the next knowledge management area is project procurement management. Many of the things, many of the material, etc. may have to be procured outside your organization. So you must have a plan for it. Project procurement management talks about acquiring goods and services from outside the performing organization. So the organization in which you are doing the project, many of the materials, etc. may need to be procured. So you must have a procurement plan. So what are the processes here? The procurement planning, the solicitation planning, the getting your vendors, getting the quotation, getting the tenders, finalization, source selection, and the overall contract administration, and the contract closeout. So all these things will form part of the procurement management. And of course, the important part, the resource management, make sure that the resources required are available to you at the right time, at the right place. Make use of the resources. Idling resources is costing you time and money. So the resource utilization has to be optimum. At least you should aim at 80 to 85% or maybe 90% resource utilization, if not more. The processes involved here are organizational planning. I mean, you plan the resource utilization part. How are you planning to utilize them? What is the staff acquisition policy? If you don't have staff inside the company, you may need to recruit it. So what is the recruitment policy? So all the things have to be chalked out in the human resource management knowledge area. And of course, how are you planning to develop the team? Because when you recruit the team, you may not have the necessary skills in some cases. So you may need to do team development. You may need to conduct certain, training, seminars, etc. So all those things will form part of the human resource management process knowledge area. So guys, so we talked about 5 processes, core processes. We talked about 9 knowledge management areas. And now we are almost coming to, I mean, we have almost covered the, the main processes and the knowledge areas. And now let us move on to the triple constraint. What is the triple constraint? As we understand, we have the cost limitation, we have the time limitation, and we have the scope limitation. And we have to ensure that all these 3 corners are rightly balanced with the right quality. So if you extend this, the time, scope, cost, you can add also the risk part and also the customer satisfaction part, because the risk might happen and it might affect any one of this. If a risk happens, it might affect your cost, it might affect your time, and it might even affect your scope. So the extension of the triple constraint into some more, including the risk and the customer satisfaction. So effectively, at least you must be able to control all this, the constraints. You must be able to manage all these constraints so that, you can effectively deliver the project. Some examples of the constraints. What is the trade-off between your constraint and its implications? Say, for example, the constraint change, the shorter time, if you want to reduce the time of the project, it might involve higher cost, and at the same time it might affect your quality. So the trade-off between your shorter time is the higher cost and reduced quality. And for example, if you want to reduce the cost part of it, if you want to reduce the cost, then what is the danger? The danger part is it might require more time, and again it might affect the quality part. And if you want to increase the quality, the higher quality, increase the scope, for example, then of course it might require more time and higher cost. So this is a trade-off, between the constraints and various adjustments required for your alternatives. So we have seen various processes areas, we have seen various knowledge areas, we have seen the constraints part. Now, who can be an effective project manager? Who can be an efficient project manager? Now, ladies and gentlemen, for doing a project, we don't need to be a technical guy. We don't require a technical guy. We are looking for a management guy. So the project manager need not be a technical guy. For example, a nurse can even manage a construction project, provided she or he has the right aptitude, attitude, and management skills. So the project manager essentially must have interpersonal skills. This is very essential because he may have to have a lot of communications between the team members, within intra-communication, extra-communication, beyond the team's communication, vertical, horizontal. So a project manager has to be an extremely interpersonal skilled person, and also he should have the general management skills involving negotiation, leadership, and mentoring, because many times you may have to negotiate project guidelines, project objectives, project scope. A lot of things need to be negotiated, so you must have a very clear negotiation skills, and you should have a good leader. You should be able to motivate his people, you should be able to guide them properly, you should be able to solve their problems, guide them, and you must be able to, the project manager must be able to mentor them as well. So not only that, the project manager needs to understand the project environment, why the project is done, who is interested in the project, who are the stakeholders, what are the strategic plan of the organization, is it in alignment with the mission and vision of the organization this project is done. So the project manager has to basically understand the project environment so that he can effectively deliver the project. So these are some of the requirements of being a project manager. And of course, the general management skills we were talking about, he should be a good leader, he should be a good communicator, he should be able to negotiate with different agencies, he should be a problem solver, he should be able to solve the problem of the team members or any other groups, and he should be an influential person, influencing the organization to get his resources and his various resources and other requirements of the project. So in general, if you see the qualities for a project manager, he should be a very good interpersonal skilled person, and he should be able to he should be a good good person in the general management skills. The next part is the stakeholder management. How do you manage stakeholder, and what is meant by stakeholder? As we have been discussing, stakeholder is a person who has got special interests and who has got special needs of doing the project, and his interest may be positively or negatively impacted by the project. So for example, if the project is a failure, the stakeholder might lose his job, or stakeholder may have some business interest which he may not be able to meet. So stakeholder is someone who has got a genuine interest, a business interest, or a personal interest in completing the project. So what are the things we should do, the different agencies should do to manage the stakeholders? So for example, if the project manager, if you're the project manager, you need to identify all of them. I mean, we need to identify all the stakeholders, we need to identify them, take care of their requirements, scope, etc. And if you are a customer of the stakeholder, you should be able to determine all the requirements. If you are a performing organization who has taken the contract on behalf of the for doing the project for the stakeholder, then you must be able to determine their expectations, because meeting the expectation is very important, because if you are not able to meet his expectation, then you may not get the project next time, or he may not give you the project next time. So the performing organizational interest is to make sure that the stakeholders' expectations are met. And the project sponsor, there must be a person, maybe in some cases the customer and the sponsor could be the same, but if they are different, this project sponsor, the person who is sponsoring the project, allocating the budget, etc., he should be able to communicate with all the stakeholders. I mean, he should be able to necessarily pass on the information to the stakeholders from time to time. And if you are a team member or internal, external end user, then you must be able to manage their influence, because stakeholders might influence the project from time to time. They might change their requirements. They might change their they might have a special requirement sometimes. So it is essential that if you are an internal or external team member or an end user, you must be able to manage their influence, because they will have a lot of influence on the project. So the stakeholder management, identifying the stakeholders and taking care of them is essential for the success of the project. And some of the stakeholders, the project benefactor or upper management could be a stakeholder. I mean, this depends upon, this is only a partial list. This is only a list which can help you, identify the stakeholders when you're doing a project. It could be a project benefactor or an upper management, the chief executive, the chairman, etc. could be a stakeholder. It could be the project requester who has requested the project to be done on behalf of the providing organization, or it could be the project manager and the team, because the project manager and the team has a necessary role to play. They have the stake in the project, definitely, as we understand. And if the team member has got a line manager, in many cases the project teams are a collection of people from different departments. And if a team member of you has a line manager, as a supervisor, then that line manager may even become a stakeholder. And of course, you may have internal consultants like legal, audit people, telecommunication people, quality assurance people, HR department, because HR department, they are a main stakeholder because they have to provide you the necessary resources. Quality assurance people, they may have to coordinate with you to make sure that the project is done according to the quality specified as per your standards, ISO standards or whatever it is. So all these people could be, a stakeholder. And even the external entities could be a stakeholder. For example, the customers, vendors, the government agencies. Government agencies could be a stakeholder. Maybe if you are doing an environmental related project, the government agency, a PUB. I mean, the pollution control board, PCB, could be a stakeholder. Or other regulatory bodies like maybe income tax department or excise department, any of the external agencies. So your duty is to identify all the possible stakeholders and manage them effectively, so that you are a successful project manager. And a question is, what are all the tasks, what are all the parts of the team stakeholder management, except, for example, the team should be able to identify the stakeholders. They should be able to determine the stakeholder needs. They should be able to manage stakeholder expectations. We talk about it, but we don't need to give them extra. So except the giving extra to the stakeholders, because stakeholders do not expect anything extra. You're supposed to do as per what is mentioned in the scope document. So all of them except giving stakeholder extras. You don't need to give them extras. You just do the project according to what has been specified. Now, in organizational structure, there are various organizational structure which you are familiar with. Maybe a line and staff organization, a line organization, a staff organization, or a functional organization, or a projectized organization, or a matrix organization. Now, matrix organization is a combination of functional and projectized. And if you are working in a projectized organization, that is the most complex part, because project teams come and go. A project team may be formed on the necessity of doing a project. They may have team members, or maybe a project manager from a particular department doing the project, and he may have team members pulled in from different departments. So as the project progresses and the project finished, the team gets dismantled. So so that is a kind of structure which will happen in a projectized organization. And if you understand the projectized organization, there is the trouble with the projectized organization is that they are reporting to many bosses. When the project is over, they move on. They move to another new project manager. They may report to a new line manager, and they have no loyalty to the project because they are belonging to the main department. So when they come in, their loyalty will be to their main department rather than to the project. I mean, these are some of the disadvantages of projectized organization. And the team members report to the functional manager. So in some cases, the project manager may not have all the authority to control the team members, because though it has got a reporting relationship, their main reporting relationship will be to the functional department from where they came in. So the project manager in many cases may be powerless. He may not have necessary power to control his team members. So this is a disadvantage. And the team members will not have a permanent home, because they'll be in project A for some time, and when the project is over, they will move on to project B, project C, etc. So they may not have a permanent home. And these are some of the disadvantages of a projectized organization. And the most complex part of an organization structure is probably the projectized, as because of the disadvantages and the the details we discussed. And how do the project come to be, and how do you get a project initially? So now the project selection can be a difficult process, especially when there are a large number of potential projects competing for scarce dollars. So in a company, suppose there are multiple projects required, they compete for the same resources. So the project selection process will be done by the company based on their requirements, based on their necessity, based on their needs. And there are some methods which will be intuitive. Others try to add rigor through more scientific selection process. I mean, there can be a lot of processes in which how to select a project. You can have a cost-benefit analysis as to decide which project has to be done first based on its cost and benefits, or whether it is adding value, etc. So how do you select the project? There are no hard and fast rule. I mean, there are many methods available, and some of them are, say for example, how do the projects come into being? Some projects are known as sacred cows. For example, these projects are those which have got special interest. The senior management or the top executive or the chairman wants it. We have heard many times saying that this project is the CEO has a special interest in this project, so it has to be done. So I mean, nobody questions it. If the chief executive wants it, nobody questions it. The project has to be done. So it may come as a drop down from the chief executive or a chairman, or it could be a business opportunity. A company is having a business opportunity to develop a product or develop a service because it will provide them more revenue. It will add more revenue to the organization. So it could be because of that, or it could be a project involving a potential saving. For example, if you do a special project, it will reduce your cost of production, or it will reduce your inventory control, whatever it is. So if it involves potential savings, that can become a project. Or to keep up with the competition, because as all of us understand, in the competing world, the companies compete for the market. So if you are doing a project and if you are able to get a benefit out of the project which will effectively which you can compete with your other competitors. For example, many e-commerce applications were done in response to competitors' initiatives, or for example your website development or any application which can project the customer's requirement properly, etc. Or it could be a project to take care of a risk management part. For example, you may have to have a disaster recovery plan in your company. So in order to have a disaster recovery plan, you may need to initiate a project. You remember in early late 90s, we had a Y2K project in the software industry to change the date from the 2-digit to 4-digit. So some risk management activities could become a project, or maybe the projects emanate because of the government and or regulatory mechanisms. So these are some of the methods in which projects come into being. So ladies and gentlemen, I am almost coming to the end of the presentation. I would just summarize what we have discussed so far. We were talking about a project management institute framework, which is known as PMBOK, that is Project Management Book of Knowledge. It has got basically 5 process areas. It has got 9 knowledge areas, which we have all discussed. And what are the essential skills of a project manager? They should have necessarily interpersonal skills, and he should have the general management skill like leading, monitoring and controlling, etc. And he should have, we talked about stakeholder management, how to manage the stakeholders who have a necessary say in the project. And ladies and gentlemen, with this I'm coming to the end of the presentation. If you can have some questions, we can go for the questions. So thank you very much for all your patient listening. I appreciate your time and effort, and thank you very much. So